Alright, the connecting rod has been baked in the oven to dry out the bushing of its water content. Baked for about a half an hour at 200 degrees. I have a very nice free fit of the pin. I'm not going to have to do any further fitting. I'd finished this with a number 7 bit. I wish now, in retrospect, I'd used about a number 8 or 9. I would like it to be a little tighter to start with. Because of the pounding pressure on this, it's going to possibly loosen up in time a bit. It still won't make any noise, even if it develops a little bit of free play from use. I could always make the hole smaller. I'd simply pull through a thicker piece of cloth or line the hole with thick paper first, like file index card paper, using the same technique, and then pull the cloth through. That will make a smaller hole and a smaller. So this is where it stands. That's the outboard side. The inboard side, I'm going to leave this collar of cloth here because that's going to act as my side play bearing. I won't have to use those crummy looking steel washers. It'll also help retain oil. Once this is oiled, it won't need to be oiled again for a long time. Although you're always free to oil it or flush it with solvent to get out any dirt you think might be in there. But it won't tend to pick up dirt, you see. It's a fairly closed bearing. Now the last refinement, before I put it together, I'm going to open up, well, I don't have to because I didn't use heat to burnish this. Let's say, let me backtrack a bit. Let's say that this was still much too tight. And also, there's a recovery factor of the cloth. It's been compressed by the pressure and the water, causing the cloth to compress against the pin. And I baked it dry. It's just come out of the oven. It's very dry. In a few hours, it's going to tighten up substantially. Cloth is always hygroscopic, especially when it's untreated by oil. Once we oil it, it'll become less sensitive to changes in moisture content. But yeah, this is going to firm up somewhat. I probably have an ideal fit. And we'll see in the long term how it holds up. I'm quite confident that it will last me for the rest of my life. If it doesn't, I'll tell you about it next year. Okay. Before I put the connecting rod back on, you see all those little spots of dirt? Even though I clean this trough quite often, even though I oil liberally, the zinc does not wear well against brass or against itself, so it's always throwing off bits of dirty oil. Blackened or grayed oil. Grayed oil is, of course, zinc rubbings in the oil. Anyway, dirty oil always proves the presence of some wear. So if your oil stays clean, relatively clean, you know there's no wear. And another thing, this cloth, if you were bushing a part that's steel, like plain steel, this cloth may contain traces of salt, table salt, which is used in the dyeing process. They make it red. So it's a good idea to soak the cloth in clean water for a little while before you use it. Let it dry out, and that will leach out any salt in it that might corrode a steel pin in time. Of course, you're going to be oiling this, so that's less of a threat. And brass parts won't rust at all, so there's no problem with a little salt getting on them. A little, not much. The pin, I'm going to polish that a bit in the electric drill before I do the final installation. So I'm going to do that step now, and then we'll put it together and I'll show you the engine running. See, these are the two washers I'd like not to use. They were inboard. They went right here. So we're going to do without those now. The new cloth bushing is now in the connecting rod big end. The long cloth collar I left on the right hand side, I cut in 4 places with a razor blade so the flaps could fold out. And they make a buffer, taking up the space that used to be taken up by these 2 crude steel washers that were simply stacked there. The flaps look a little untidy, so in a little while I'll take a razor blade and cut them off. The excess will remain there and serve a purpose. It'll stop any side slap. The rod, because the pin is not at right angles to the crank journal, because this disc is a little crooked and can't be fixed, puts a side slap on the rod at the small end now. It used to be at the big end as well. So this is a little tic-tac noise with every revolution as the rod tries to go left and then right. We'll take care of that for right now with a bit of paper or cloth as a shim in there, something thin, just to absorb the metallic knock that presently would be heard. But it's already much quieter. There's the knock you hear as I force the flywheel around. In one running direction, there's a tendency for things like these crank pin screws and crank discs to unscrew. So we'll use a little bit of locking agent. I'm trying to look through the viewfinder, I can't. And that's a wicking grid, just get some on there. It isn't going to hurt the cloth, but just a little bit on the threads. And then we'll screw it in. Let me just start it in with a small screwdriver and then finish it with a proper size screwdriver so I don't bung up the screw slot. You see the cloth flanges I made, they fold out nicely. I'll tighten that up in a minute after I'm off camera. There's no shake or play in this. There's no more slap. There will be a few little noises yet because there's back and forth play in this bearing here and in this bearing point here is untreated, and the eccentric being made of die cast against die cast and a very loose tolerance too will make a little bit of noise at times, but this is going to sound different than most Wilescos now.